All right, hello, and welcome back to Lesson 7 of Unit 3, Area Study 2, where we're looking at the domestic macroeconomic goals. We've been looking at the goal of full employment, which is the lowest rate of unemployment possible without causing any unnecessary inflationary or external pressures, which is similar to NIRU, which is the non-accelerating inflationary rate of unemployment, which is when there's around 4.5% of natural unemployment existing. Last lesson, we looked at how to calculate a variety of labor force market indicators. And then today we're going to be looking at the consequences of if we do not achieve the goal of full employment. So our key knowledge for this part of the area study is the consequences of not achieving the goal of full employment. So its effects on living standards, including the impact on GDP and tax revenue if unemployment's too high, because the government's got to pay more welfare outlays and they're getting less tax revenue in, and the effects on inflation if the unemployment rate is too low. So I'm learning attention, as it has been the whole time, to understand the impact of changing economic activity on domestic macroeconomic goals, so how changes to the unemployment rate then impact other parts of the economy. So our success criteria today is that you can apply the consequences of not achieving the goal of full employment to various other indicators. So similarly, consequences of not achieving full employment. So for living standards, if unemployment is too high, material living standards will worsen as average incomes fall. So if people are working less, they're not getting incomes, therefore average incomes have fallen as they move on to transfer incomes like welfare, which is lower than a working income. Non-material living standards also tend to worsen as stress levels increase, as people may be worried about the future because they're not earning enough to cover their bills, etc. Or crime rates worsen as unemployment gets higher. People start relying on basically crime to get by. If unemployment is too low, material living standards may also worsen as inflation rises, and therefore incomes are worth less comparatively. So at the moment, we've got an unemployment rate of 3.5% and a really high inflation rate. A lot of people are worse off at the moment because inflation is increasing faster than their income, and therefore, even though they are working, their money is worth less every time prices rise. Non-material living standards may also worsen due to increased stress from that increased cost of living that we are currently having. Some impacts on GDP. So if unemployment is too high, productive capacity and overall production is likely to be lower because we've got less people working, and therefore we've got less capacity for actually producing, and therefore that's going to decrease economic growth. If unemployment is too low, production may increase at a rate which is too fast or unsustainable, and this may lead to inflationary pressures. That may also lead to environmental damage, and that may also lead to depleting our natural resources at a much faster rate. The impact on tax revenue. So if unemployment is too high, the government will be collecting less tax revenue from income and business profits and outlaying more funds in unemployment benefits. So welfare outlays or transfer incomes, which means the government is going to be collecting less and outlaying more, which is far worse for their budget position. Then lastly, the impact on inflation. So if unemployment is too low, it can increase aggregate demand faster than aggregate supply can maintain, and this can cause widespread shortages of goods and services. When this happens, it puts upward pressure on prices, and that creates demand inflationary pressures, and that drives inflation up and can kind of lead to situations like we currently have in November of 2022, where we have an inflation rate of 7.3%, and therefore prices are increasing at a really high rate, and that obviously has negative impacts on our living standards. And that's it for the consequences of not achieving the goal of full employment. We only have one goal left, which is all about inflation, which we've talked about a lot throughout this topic. So hopefully you've already got a bit of an idea about it. We'll be doing a similar thing where we talk about the goal of low inflation, how it's measured, and then the consequences of not achieving it. And that will be all for this part of the topic. And then we'll move on to Area Study 3. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave a comment below or email me, Sean@therunningeconomy.com. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.